Okay, this is module number 3 in this series where I am trying to lay the foundation for this new method of valuation, this kind of wholesale rethinking of the sales comparison approach. And I want to continue the discussion that I've started in my first two modules. First module, I really wanted to drive home the idea that adjustments cannot be supported. You cannot support an adjustment in isolation. The only way that you can do that is by holding other adjustments stable, constant. And by doing that, we're actually imposing determinism into our system. And by system, I mean this collection of data that we are trying to use to create a model that's supposed to be representative of our real estate market. And so I want to talk a little bit more about that model. And what I really want to drive home today is that this model is really what you would call a hedonic valuation model. And that term, if you're not super familiar with it, it derives from a Greek word, hedonikos. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it means pleasure. And so today I really wanted to talk about specifically the problem of pleasure as it relates to the sales comparison approach. So let's start out by recognizing a few things. Um, Pleasure is not universal. I want to give an example. I just went on vacation and I went to the beach. My wife and I both agree that we derive a lot of pleasure from a day at the beach. Not everybody agrees. There's a lot of people out there who say, no way, I'm not going to the beach. You get sand everywhere. I don't enjoy swimming in the ocean. No, it's not for me. So there is not a universal level of pleasure for anything. And so that is one thing that we need to notice, because if we are essentially applying an adjustment, what we're saying is this is the market level of pleasure for this property element. And so we need to understand that, okay, well, pleasure is not universal. And even for the same person, for maybe the same subsection of a market, it's not universal, because my own perception of pleasure, of utility from a property element or anything changes over time. So in my beach example, I have always liked the beach, but the things that I like about it have changed over the years, and I have actually have different trade-offs for my vacation time that I have to consider, because there are different things that I like about different places. And so that's really something to consider. In terms of real estate, we can think of that as, you may have, say somebody before COVID who had a space in their home that really didn't have a lot of utility. They weren't using it for anything. Um, was a space they could probably live without. After COVID, maybe they were working from home and that became their work from home space. And maybe that space then became very valuable. They really needed that particular, unused quiet space in order to continue working. And so that's an example how even for the same person, uh, pleasure, utility is not a constant. So then we add some extra layers to that. So another thing we want to pay attention to is that our perception, our awareness of our pleasure from a given activity or property element, that it's not something that we're consciously aware of, and especially we're not consciously aware of in a way that we can necessarily quantify. And so I can give an example. I would love to have a third car garage. I've got 5 drivers and living in my home right now. That's a lot of cars, and a third car garage would be really nice. But in a few years, when I'm an empty nester, that third car garage may not really have any real utility to me at that time of my life. And so the the ability for me, even as an appraiser, to quantify, well, how much would I like that third car garage? What would I be willing to pay for it? Well, not enough to make me want to move right now. Um, but what how do I think about that? Well, that is something that's difficult to quantify, and that number changes based on my life circumstances and in different moments in time. And so then another thing, let's add another layer, and that's uh, when you're thinking about a hedonic valuation model, what we're really looking at it is all of these different features that we derive pleasure from them. They don't exist in isolation. We really buy bundles of features. And so we really need to think about sometimes those bundles have trade-offs. If I were to say, uh, be looking at a property and thinking, well, do I want a pool or not? Well, I may derive pleasure from some additional usable yard space, and I may also derive pleasure from having a pool. Well, I can't have both. I can't have really, yard to for my dogs to play in, and a pool. So because that there's a trade-off there. And so then we as appraisers, we have a whole nother layer that we have to deal with, and that's messy data. Because we are stepping back, we're trying to be impartial observers of this market. We're trying to understand the structure of the system that is reflected in our data. The system being how the market behaves, how actual human buyers and sellers are interacting around real property. And so if we are stepping back to do that, we're hampered by the fact that we have limited data. The data is multivariate. We've got lots of different features. So these bundles of different property elements that have utility and pleasure. Uh, you know, the size of that bundle relative to the number of data points, the number of comparables that we have, makes it very difficult to ascertain, well, what is that market level of pleasure for a given property element? And so we want to keep that in mind, and all of that leads us to a conclusion about the need to consider probability. What I just described to you is a probabilistic system. There is no adjustment factor that will really describe a market level uh, of pricing for a particular property element because of everything I just described. Uh, there is the fact that that number's always changing. That number's not really perceptible by the market participants in a way that they can really articulate. Those elements are bundled in with other elements, and it's very difficult to look at a set of data and pull all that apart. So what we want to realize is that feature value, so an adjustment for a feature, it exists in a distribution, not a fixed number. And so it's really important that our valuation modeling, when we're actually trying to create a valuation model that is really going to be predictive of behavior, of pricing in a given market, we have to be really explicit in and how and when we deal with the concept of probability. And that's really important to consider for every feature value. When we're making adjustments, those all exist in their own distribution. And so what we're going to talk about next is the fact that those distributions, they actually impact one another. They don't exist in isolation. And so two distributions interacting and intersecting, that is something that's very difficult to visualize, and it's something that creates a type of system that I've coined this term interdeterminate. And so we're going to talk about that next. What do I mean by an interdeterminate system, and what sort of implications are there if that is what our real estate markets look like?